Hello, my name is Natasha. Thank you for inviting me to read my stories. Let me just tell you a few things about myself. I took a couple years of writing with Ziza Hava here in Ithaca, and I had something happen to me that really sort of got me going into reading the stories that I wrote. I sent in a little one that I had written to the Metropolitan Diary of the New York Times. And every Monday I went to see if my story was published. And one day, 2 months later, I found it, and I'm going to read it to you. It's called Things. There are no inanimate objects, so it's always been said. You should come to my home. You know that it's true. The teapot curses all day long. The dishes rattle instead. The knives and forks are happy. The spoons are always blue. The glasses whisper very softly. They are true ladies indeed. The cups think they are superior. They are a shallow breed. And the coffee pot truly believes that he's a father to them all. And he's always giving orders. Oh, he has a lot of gall. My things have no compassion. I'm sure they always plot just how to drive me crazy. They've succeeded. Thanks a lot. Then I decided, since I had sent one in, maybe I should try my luck another time. And this was also published in the Metropolitan Diary of the New York Times. It's called O by Itself. O by itself means nothing. What it depends on is the tone of voice. What it depends on is the circumstances. What it depends on is whether it is heartfelt. What it depends on is the song and the voice. What it depends on is the fury behind the tone. What it depends on is the sarcasm meant to hurt. What it depends on is the astonishment. What it depends on is the sorrow. What it depends on is the superiority. What it depends on is the brush off. Now do you understand? I want to read you now a short story called The Violinist. Now that I am safe in the United States and I'm starting to look the way I did before being in a concentration camp, I'm slowly starting to reflect. I was what they call a child prodigy. I played the violin from the age of 4, and by the time I was 12, my name was so well known that people would buy tickets to the concert just to hear me. I went by my first name only, Shoshana. You have, of course, gathered that I'm Jewish. I traveled everywhere with my mother as a chaperone, and the German government at that time had given me the key to the city of Heidelberg. It had been a great ceremony, and I felt so joyous and lighthearted on that day, and although it is hard for me to believe that it really happened. Well, Hitler came to power, and I was rounded up like everyone else. By then, no one cared if you were famous or not. I was separated from my parents, and there I was, only 18 years old, and living in the most horrible circumstances one can imagine. Now comes the dilemma that is haunting me still. The question that I ask myself, but I cannot answer. One of the guards recognized my name from a list of inmates getting ready to go to the gas chamber. He ran up to his superior and told him who I was and the benefit the camp officers would have if I could play for them. So I was spared. Since I was by then so skinny that I could hardly stand, I was taken to another barrack where Jewish sycophants lived in luxury compared to where I had been. I was given food, My rags were thrown out, and I was handed a clean gray smock. 2 weeks later, a violin was procured and given to me with orders to practice and to get ready to give a concert within a month. And so began my new life. Here I was, playing this beautiful music, mostly from German composers, to this audience of murderers who with rapt faces were listening to me, and there in the background could be seen the smoke from the gas chambers. I played for 2 years before my deliverance, but I still ask myself whether I was a traitor to my faith, and would it have been better to have died? I don't know. What would you have done? This is a fun one. How to be a perfect person in 3 days. Oh, what a marvelous goal. What a refreshing thought. Away with the books telling me that it takes a lifetime. This I can handle. Yes, wait until my family sees me. The stupefaction on their faces will be worth it. They will feel so guilty to have thought so little of me. And those friends, oh, false friends, really. I'll need new ones, better ones. Those superior beings who have conquered their basic instincts. Those role models everyone looks up to. I'll be one of them. I can't wait. I have to begin now, this minute. So where do I begin? Oh, dear me, I don't know. Slow down, sit still a minute, okay. I won't gossip anymore. What will I talk about? Philosophy, books, politics? That's boring. I guess gossip is not a big deal. I'll leave it alone, for now at least. Is having a messy home a fault? I don't think so. It has a warm, lived-in atmosphere, so forget that one. Nosiness? It's true, I've been told that, but if you really think about it, it translates into caring. The same as giving advice when I'm not asked for it. It means that I'm there to help and I want that person to know it. Do my eating habits count to make me perfect? So I eat junk food. Doesn't hurt anyone. Good. I don't have to do anything about it. Come to think of it, I don't have a thing to do. I just had to come to this conclusion myself. I'm already perfect. Hallelujah, what a relief. I'm ready to take my real place in society. And to think that I could have spent my entire life without this knowledge? Well, I'm going to read you a couple of haikus. Haikus, they're about 3-liners. And this one has the idea was to write some haikus on the sentence, keep busy. Keep busy, the boss man hollers and the chain gang moves on. Keep busy, don't think, don't sit down, you can't give in now. Keep busy, that's my refrain. Why did I have 6 children? Keep busy. If I do all my chores, I'll dance up a storm tonight. Keep busy, Grandma says while shelling peas. You will never stray that way. Keep busy, the clock is ticking loudly. I don't want time to slip by. Keep busy. Although my hands are gnarled, I want to be useful. Keep busy. Idleness will lead to evil, the preacher shouts from the pulpit. Keep busy, there's no time to play, farm work is never done. Keep busy, the end of the world is coming. Keep busy, look at the ants, they never stop and they build. Keep busy, what a refrain. Will it ever stop whispering in my ear? And here is a little poem. Some see heaven in a little flower. Some see beauty in the blue sky. Some feel great if they have power. Some think of happy days gone by. For me, holding my precious newborn baby, whose skin is so tender and sweet to the touch, makes me feel connected to the great power that be. He's given me a reason to live. I now have so much. I'm going to read, I think, a rather sweet story. I won't give you a title because it'll give the story away. Frail as a sapling birch and with the sun shining on his silver head, he walked haltingly down the garden path. His steps were slow and careful, but now and then he stopped. He would put his weight on his stout wood mountaineering cane and look around. Although his eyes were small and had receded in a bed of wrinkles, he really saw and relished the flowers bordering the asphalt. He so very much wanted to bend down. Just this once, he thought. He could pick up a daffodil, and he could see himself giving it to Bertha, who would look at him in astonished surprise, her countenance brimming with love. He started to lower his head, and it caused him pain. He then thought of his knees, and he knew they could not support his weight if he bent down. So he uttered a little whistling sigh and again walked on. It seemed to be a two-step dance. Step, step, pause. Step, step, pause. But he doggedly went on. There was a purpose to this outing. He had it all figured out. He opened the gate at the end of the garden, looked right and left before stepping off the curb and crossed the street. His breath came out in painful bursts, but he dare not stop the momentum. He just had to make it. He'd been planning this outing for days. After about 5 minutes, he arrived at his destination. He stopped in front of a store and with great effort opened the door. He had made it, he thought triumphantly, and now came the moment he had looked forward to. A few steps down the aisle, and there he had the most delicious task of choosing a Valentine card for his beloved. I will now read you a bit of a longer story, and it is called The Chinaman. It was right here in front of me. Ching was on his knees as usual. It was 4:30 a.m. on a gray, cold day. 2 years ago, he had made a small altar at the back of his shop. On it was a Buddha made of rare sandalwood. How he was able to afford it was in itself a small miracle. Ching's wife had died a few years ago from overwork. He had not been extravagant with the funeral, a small pine box of the cheapest kind, not a very big one, because Ching's wife was small and rather undernourished. His lifestyle had not changed very much since then. Got up in the morning, ate his bowl of boiled rice with the chopsticks his family had handed down from one generation to another. And since he had no son, he guessed that the chopsticks would be stolen when he died. He would shrug his shoulders at the thought. Those were not considerations which occupied him. All he was interested in was to make a living. His shop was small and rather dark, but he did have customers because the teas and herbs that he sold were of excellent quality. His wants were few, and his life ran smoothly. Except for the death of his wife, his routine did not vary. On this particular day, 2 years ago, he had a shipment of Ceylon tea. It was a larger order than usual because the price had been so low. But the problem became where to put it. As he was rummaging through the shelves to make room for it, he saw a square wooden box. Upon closer inspection, He saw that it was beautifully carved. He'd never seen it before, and he was curious. After dusting it off, he tried to open it and found that he couldn't. He surmised that it was a trick box, a type he had played with in his childhood, but it was not. He went to bed puzzled and dreamt of the box and saw a tiny spring in the center of one of the flowers. He woke up, jumped out of bed, ran to the table where he had put the box, and lo and behold, the lid sprang open, and in it was a new, crisp $10,000 bill. Ching closed the box immediately, not believing what his eyes had seen. His heart beat violently, and he felt dizzy. Again he opened the box, and again he saw the bill. All day Ching wrestled with the problem. What was he going to do about it? Where did it come from? Did anyone else know about it? Days went by with these thoughts buzzing in his head. He lost sleep, he lost weight. He could not rejoice in his good fortune. If he went to the bank, they would immediately question him. They knew about his finances, and this would seem mighty suspicious. He thought about going outside of Chinatown and using another bank, but he had never left the confines of his neighborhood and was frightened at the thought of leaving it. Whom could he confide in? He had no real friends, and anyway, the people he knew were also poor. They would either envy his good fortune or look askance, wondering where he had really gotten it or tried to steal it. The priests of the temple were a thieving lot. He knew them too well, so what to do? What to do was his theme. Meanwhile, he was neglecting himself in his store. Faithful customers were turned away because Ching was not keeping up with their usual demands. One night, he had another dream. He saw himself purchase the statue of a Buddha, and that his prayers to it would be answered. So the next day, he went to visit various shops looking for the right statue. Finally, in the last shop, he saw his statue. He almost fainted when the shopkeeper told him the price, but with the thought of the $10,000, he decided to spend all of his meager savings to purchase his very own Buddha. He arranged a little altar for it with some incense and flowers. He even had a little cushion for his knees, and so began the morning ritual. Ching prayed earnestly and fervently. Buddha, he prayed, let me know what to do, where to go. I'll build a proper altar for you, have a fresh garland of flowers for your neck every single day. The inside of the altar will be gold, and the most expensive perfumed candles will be lit day and night, and so on, he intoned. 2 years went by, and one day, while praying, the thought came to him to contact the gang leader of his street. He was a savvy Chinaman from Hong Kong who had an excellent reputation, based on fear for the most part. However, he was considered a man of his word. Ching put out the word on the street, and on Sunday night, he and Mr. Wu met in his store, and Ching poured out his dilemma. Mr. Wu nodded his head and listened silently for a long while before saying, I'll take the money and we'll change it for small bills. My fee is 35%. Although Ching was greedy, he'd not quibble, thinking that any money was better than none. They shook hands solemnly, and Mr. Wu said that he would be back on the following Sunday. Ching was beside himself with joy all week. He thanked the Buddha profusely. He dreamt of moving into a bigger place, enlarging his shop, buying new clothes, even smoking a pipe of opium now and then with the rich folks. He was going to do all this step by step so people would not talk about his new prosperity, but would assume that business was good. He could hardly wait for Sunday. And finally, the fateful day came. At 8 p.m., he heard 3 rapid knocks. He ran to open the door, and there he saw a contemptuous-looking young thug who threw the bill on the floor and sneered, "It's counterfeit," and turned on his heels and disappeared into the night. A little sad. here are a couple haikus for a change. My shadow was sad, but I was smiling. He did not see it. The old seamstress, bent and rheumy-eyed, sewing a button. It is so hot that devils are taking cold showers. What a switch. In a dark cupboard, the crumpled $5 bill was not lost. Howling, screaming in the empty room, grief pours out. Silence, overpowering, number the senses, small death. Voice over the phone, comforting, soothing, renewal. Chocolate, chocolate, none here, she cries out. Frustration. Searing pain, bleeding heart, loss. She carried a baby on her back, renewal. From faltering step to running wild, growth. Here's another story called Life in the Country. I don't know which one of us first came up with the idea. Was it Edward or myself? It must have been Edward, because after what happened, I don't want to take any responsibility. Let me start at the beginning. We were city folks who had a dream. The dream was to get close to nature. Why, you ask? Well, we had read a book by Ralph Waldo Emerson extolling the virtues of country living. Besides, to be perfectly honest, Edward and I were not making it in the business world. All we could afford was a tiny walk-up apartment on Avenue B. The only living creatures in the apartment besides ourselves were roaches. I hated them so. It was visceral. I tried every approach to get rid of them. I even read an article in a magazine suggesting that a healthy solution for disposing of these disgusting bugs was to make a paste of baking soda and put it on a slice of potato. It's true, there was not a pesticide, but it didn't work either. So we set a lot of traps, but these were street-wise roaches, and they knew instinctively how to avoid them. Then we tried the bomb. It is a fumigating device which fills the room with deadly vapor. And when we returned home, there was a graveyard of little corpses. You've heard, I'm sure, about forests devastated by fire, springing back to life a week later. Need I say more? The country idea continued to beckon us, and after much discussion, we decided to move to Ithaca, a charming college town in a lovely part of New York State. We bought a little house on 3 acres of land, and it was heaven. We decided to plant a vegetable garden and even put in a few fruit trees. The day we ate a salad made up of our homegrown lettuce, radishes, carrots, and tomatoes was the finest meal we ever had. We thought that since we were becoming farmers, we should then proceed to the next step. And that's how the idea of owning chickens came about. We decided to start with 10 baby chicks. Edward built an incubator with the light shining on the chicks night and day. I cut up an old comforter to put at the bottom so they would be cozy. And we put them in our bedroom because it was the warmest spot in the house. Like I said, I'm a city girl. I never had a desire to own a pet, but I felt instantly and hopelessly in love with these little yellow creatures. I would pick them up, kiss their soft, satiny down, and murmur pet names to them. At night, their chirping put me to sleep, and it was the first thing I heard when I woke up in the morning. I was so besotted with them that I even caused a rift between me and my best friend. One day I was showing her my brood. I was becoming rather possessive by then. And she pointed to one chick and said, "Ah, chicken cacciatore," and to another, stir fry, and by the time she said lemon fried chicken, I shoved her out of the house while she was still laughing hysterically at her jokes. The chicks grew and became little teenage hens. Edward built a chicken coop outside, and it became their new home. One morning at breakfast, Edward mentioned that he had talked to a neighbor who said he would gladly kill our hens in return for one to keep for himself. I rose from the table shrieking, "Kill our hens? Are you mad?" Edward replied, "Darling, wasn't that the whole idea? To kill them and freeze them so that we'd have meat in the winter?" I can be unreasonable at times. "Don't ever speak to me about this again. Not ever." I rushed out of the house and went directly to the coop. I sat down and quietly spoke to my children. Well, that's how I felt. "Mother will not let any harm befall you, my precious ones. Here's a special treat." And I gave them crumbs from my homemade apple cake. "You'll grow up and live to a ripe old age, I promise." And I went on crooning like that for a while. Nothing more was said, and the strain between Edward and myself eased. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, Edward had been speaking to that same neighbor who told him if he waited any longer, the hens would become hard to chew once cooked. On that particular Saturday, I went in town to get my hair cut and do some shopping. It was dusk when I returned home. Everything seemed serene and quiet as always. I thanked the powers that be for my good fortune finding this little piece of Eden. I opened the front door and called out, "I'm home, sweetheart," and walked into the kitchen. The floor was littered with feathers, and sitting around the table, I discovered a horrid neighbor and my husband plucking feathers from broken bodies with no necks. A red haze enveloped me, and I heard a high-pitched wail of distress. All I remember is picking up the cleaver and then darkness. The doctors say that I'm making a lot of progress. I've been in this ward for about a month. Edward, I'm told, comes every day, but I refuse to see that butcher again. I told my doctor yesterday that I think I was better off in the city with the cockroaches. At least there I knew how to hate and who to kill. Thank you for listening to me, and I will be back again with other stories. Goodbye. Good evening. Welcome once more to Natasha's Stories. I look forward to sharing a few more with you. First of all, I'd like to show you a children's story which I self-published this summer. The title is The Dragon Was Fooled, and it is for children 7 and 8 years old and can be found downtown. Anyway, the first story takes place in France, and it rhymes. I was in a hurry to get out of there. It was a dirty bistro, and I did not care for the way the patrons were looking at me. A man stepped up and said, "Come with me." I was all ready to tell him where to go, but he looked at me, and I could not say no. We ran out the door and got wet instantly. It was raining so hard, we could not see. He took me by the arm and said, "Chérie, have no fear, I will find us a taxi." And yes, he was as good as his word, and there was a car waiting at the curb. Once inside, he politely asked for my address. I told him I wanted badly to change my dress. I sat shivering and miserable in the back of the car. It took a long time, though I don't live very far. Since I've been in France for the past 10 days, I've hardly slept. There's too much to see. I was in a daze. I was fortunate to trade an apartment with someone who took mine in New York, and I have hers, Rue L'Unicorn. Henri, that was his name, ran up all 5 flights lightly. I was right behind him, puffing and groaning mightily. He took the key from my hand and opened the door. And with a ridiculous bow, he bent to the floor, saying in exaggerated French, "Entre, ma jolie, passe." And I kept wondering how I got into this impasse. Behind a heavy brocade curtain, there was a big sofa, a small kitchenette on the right, and 2 chairs, and voila! That was the extent of my Palatian domain. Not much, it's true, but I do not complain. I was in Paris, France. My dream was a reality. I had waited 2 years to save enough money. And here I was alone with a man I did not know. It had never happened before when I lived in Soho. Never, never did I let a man come too close. It was not that I was unfriendly, surly, or morose, but I had big ideals about what romance should be. I was a good Catholic girl, like my mother before me. I knew the 10 Commandments. I could recite them by heart. The sacraments of marriage and my vision were a part. Every Friday I went to confession, and I felt proud that I was not ashamed to talk to my priest aloud, for everyone to hear if they happened to be near. What a good and pure girl I was, a real dear. My mother would turn white if she knew what I was doing. Taking a stranger home, she would think of my undoing. My father, stern and proud, would revile me and yell, and afterwards, what would he do? I cannot tell. All these thoughts passed through my tired brain. I was soaked to the skin, shivering and in pain. All I could think of was to get out of my clothes. What could I say to Henri as he stood there poised? Well, I took my courage, and bold as could be, I said, "Henri, would you please make us some tea? I must change immediately into something warm. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I'm freezing." And then I yawned. He looked at me for just a moment and said rather slyly, "Of course, I understand. I really understand completely. I will make the tea, and I hope you have some liqueur. It is the best medicine and will make you warmer." I told him where the whiskey was, and to the bathroom I went, stripping quickly. I put on my robe. Oh, it was heaven sent. It was so warm and so cuddly and not at all sexy. I thought I would be safe. But I didn't know Henri. He took one look at me and said, "You are divine, and I know before the night is over, you'll be mine." Was I shocked to hear those words? I don't know now. He took me in his arm, and I was kissing him back somehow. One thing led to another without much protest from me. He untied my belt, and I stood triumphant in my nudity. I had read many books about France before coming over, also about how a Frenchman was reputed as a lover. I thought nothing about it until the Saturday night, when I made love to one with all my might. The vacation is over. It seems like forever. I never saw Henri again after that. No, not ever. But I have not forgotten him, not a minute, oh no. You see, he left me with the most beautiful, delightful cadeau. You've guessed it. I've called him Little Henri, so now you see why. I'll always remember my stay in Paris. This is a takeoff on the fairy tale Cinderella from the point of view of the stepmother. I was so very much in love with this man. It seems as though I had been waiting for him my whole life. And yet I'd been married before I met him. I was the mother of 2 little girls that I doted on, and they were precious. My husband then owned a small ranch, and he was very often on horseback, not only for pleasure, but to check on the cattle, give riding lessons, and gallop to see nearby friends. Well, there was an accident. He was not only thrown off his skittish horse, but trampled on. I became a widow in my early 20s. I was distraught more by being alone with so many responsibilities than by losing my mate. I managed for a few years, and then one day, this gorgeous, tall, well-dressed man came by to ask if I wanted to sell the ranch because he had been admiring my property. To make a long story short, as one is always fond of saying, we were married, and it was like a long honeymoon. The only setback was that he also had a daughter. She was beautiful. She was about the same age as my older girl. You would think that the 3 girls would have gotten along together. But what happened was that my darlings became terribly jealous. You see, she was cherished by her father, and my daughters were only tolerated. I started to resent her also. So I devised a plan. While my husband was away during the day, I had Cinderella, that was her name, do house chores, help with the sheep, pigs, and hens. In other words, I kept her out of the house while I had tutors for my own children. They had harpsichord lessons, dancing lessons, singing lessons, and lessons in deportment. My idea was to have them marry well. We lived in a part of the realm where the prince and his family would come to vacation during the summer. And once during that time, the royal family gave a ball, and everyone who had daughters in the region would be invited. And of course, I wanted my girls to shine, and a mother could dream, even catch the bachelor prince's fancy. You are wondering how my husband felt about my treatment of his darling daughter? He didn't find out, because before he came home, I had Cinderella wash up, change her filthy clothes for clean ones, and told her if she ever breathed a word of what was going on, she would bitterly regret it. She knew I had enough dominion over her father to know I meant it. So the date of the ball was announced. What excitement! New dresses were ordered. The household was in an uproar. Cinderella, of course, was not invited to come along. And my husband, fortunately, had been called away because his mother was ill. Plans were made, and off we went. When my daughters bowed, I think I saw a glint of approval in the prince's eye. The evening was splendid. All went well, until all of a sudden, there was utter silence in the ballroom. Catastrophe. Cinderella came in holding on to her father's arm. She had on a simple white dress, and she looked stunning. Her father had come home unexpectedly, and upon learning where his wife had gone with her girls, he flew into a rage, ordered a carriage, waited for Cinderella to get ready, and by sheer coincidence, he had bought her a birthday dress. And you know the rest. I'm now a divorced woman living with 2 bitter and resentful girls, and they are now doing all the work. This is a poem relevant to these days, I think. It's daybreak, and the stars are fading. How did the time fly by so fast? I know you must leave, and my heart is breaking. The present is already becoming the past. Why must you go, I've asked you during this night. It's not your war. You might be killed, you know. People feel that it's so necessary to fight. Haven't they heard about peace? Oh no, oh no. We're married only 3 days and I'm so in love. I had a nightmare. I was dressed in black, on my knees by your coffin, the blue skies above, at 19 a widow. I woke up. I felt slack. It will never be true. I want you to stay. Be with me. The bullets will never reach you here at home. He shakes his head and says, come what may, I live in you and you in me. You will never be alone. I'm the whisper in the leaves, the voice in the rain. I'm the bark of your dog, the song of the cuckoo. Just remember me when you feel your pain, and I'll be the air whispering all around you. The clown. He was so well known that when the Ringling Brothers Circus came to town, you can almost hear his name spoken around at the various dinner tables. Bonifacio is here. Let's go see him, Mom and Dad, can we? Of course we can. We've waited a year for him. We'll get the tickets somehow. Bonifacio was used to all this adulation. He had a following wherever he went. After all, he was the clown numero uno for more years than he wanted to remember. But of course he remembered. It was 18 years ago. He keeps coming back to his past. He has been doing it a lot lately. They say winter affects one's disposition, but it had never done it before. He is suddenly struck with an answer. He had not remembered at the time, but this town was 30 miles from where the tragedy took place. Oh my God, he cries out, how could I have forgotten? But the truth is that I never can. I guess I buried it deep down. Yes, I was a clown even in high school. Everyone loved hearing my jokes, my imitations, my pratfalls. Even in the yearbook, everyone wrote that I was an amusing fellow, that it was a joy to be in classes with me, and how I made everyone laugh, etc. What they didn't know was that I was terribly sad underneath all of this merriment. My family life was a disaster. Why do I say family? What family? The head of the household was long gone. My mother was a bitter, unhappy woman who used to rant and rave when I came home about every little thing. Why? Because I resembled her hated husband. My life was a nightmare. There was no pleasing her ever. I started to stay late after school, tried out for the school play, and was given a small role. I now had a great excuse. That was my life. I needed love very badly. And now I understand much better what made me go after Mary Lou, who was another cast member. She was sweet, had lovely manners, with a pleasing voice to match. I could tell she was inexperienced because she would blush profusely when the guys would tell raunchy jokes. I started to ask her to have coffee with me after rehearsal. First she was too shy and refused, but my insistence paid off. Little by little I gained her trust and confidence, and she allowed some necking and lots of kissing. I was enthralled. Well, the day of the show arrived, and it was a fabulous success. Curtain calls, plural, and we were thrilled. No one came to see me, and by an unfortunate set of circumstances, her parents could not make it that evening. They were coming to the next performance. So here we were, wild with joy. We decided to take her car and go somewhere, anywhere to celebrate. For some reason, I can't remember why, she parked and we were in each other's arms, taking most of our clothes off, and we had the most joyous, satisfying sex I have ever had. Unfortunately, the result was a downer. Mary Lou became pregnant. Didn't show for some months, but when it did, her parents were furious. They were going to send her away to have the baby and then have it adopted so that people in town would never know about it. No way, I said, and she left home and so did I. We went to live in this little town. I found work and we just managed. I don't know if it was the lack of nourishing food or stress, but the upshot was that she lost the babies. That's right, she was carrying twins. She became quite ill, and when she recovered, she felt that the loss of the twins had been God's punishment for her sins, since she had remained a good Catholic at heart. So she left me to become a nun. She's now called Sister Maria. I left town feeling totally miserable. Not only had I lost the love of my life, my reason to live, but my unborn children. I love children. Yes, you've guessed it. I love making little kids laugh. It's the only time during the day that I'm truly happy. As they say, to become a good clown, you must feel deep pain. I am the best. Baby. This is my nickname, although I'm 21. I'm proud of it. It was dearly won. I was indeed the youngest at one time, but I have brothers and sisters. We number 9. It was rough at first to be pushed aside by another crying infant, my mother's pride. It kept on happening, it seems, year after year. There was no one anymore who would call me dear. So I decided to make my mark in school. I had great grades. I also dove in the pool. One day a girl cried out as I did my highest swan dive, "Oh my, oh baby, be careful, watch out, stay alive." And the chant was picked up by all who were there. And now I'm called Baby. No, it doesn't sound square. On the contrary, when I swagger down these streets so mean, you can hear the shouts, "Hey, there comes Baby. How have you been?" So what do I care if my family has no time for me? To the outside world, I'm strong, I'm macho, I'm Baby. This is another takeoff. Little Red Riding Hood, the point of view of the wolf. It's not a lot of fun being one of 10 children. Since I was the smallest, you can imagine what little chance I had to drink my mama's milk, since I was always pushed aside. How was I to grow up? I decided to talk to my father. I had to make an appointment to see him because he was the big head honcho of our tribe and had lots of responsibilities. If anyone had any complaints, they would go to him and he meted out advice and punishment. I finally managed to get a 5-minute slot. After listening to me, he crossed his paws, a sign that he was listening intently, and finally said, "Your mother has had more children than anyone else, so the solution does not lie there." What a pompous way of talking, I thought to myself. I'm just a little runt of a wolf, and besides, I'm his son. I think that I have to pull in some favors and send you to another tribe. I've heard that one of the women has had only 3 sons, so there should be plenty of milk to go around. That night, after packing my little bag, my mother licked my face, a sign of great emotion, and said, "Good luck, my dear, dear boy. Come back to us when you're big and strong." My brothers and sisters waved half-heartedly. They really didn't care, and the truth be told, they hardly knew me. So as time went by, I did grow up and became strong. I even started to fight others, not only for the prestige, but to impress the girls. However, one thought was dominant: home. Home. I wanted to go back home in triumph. I was going to do something spectacular, and I could just imagine the envy of my siblings. I roamed the woods wondering what I could do. And on one of these walks, I noticed a house and a pretty little girl playing in the garden. So I crept nearer, and just then her mother looked out the door and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, I just had a call from your grandma. She would like you to bring her some cakes tomorrow." "Okay," answered Red. That's the nickname I gave her. So the next day, I waited patiently until she came out, and then followed her. We walked and walked, but soon I saw some smoke, and then around the corner I saw a bungalow. I raced ahead, making sure I was not seen, and knocked at the door. So Grandma, thinking I was Red, let me in. And since I had not eaten in days, I dispatched her quickly, and just as quickly jumped into the bed, pulling up covers up to my chin. I also put on her bonnet, and when Red knocked, I made my voice sound as soft as could. "Come in, darling." She did, and then looked at me and started a series of questions about my eyes and my nose. When she asked about my mouth, I jumped out of bed and snapped her neck. Since I was no longer hungry, I made a quick decision. I carried Red in my drawers and ran to greet my family. You can imagine how joyously I was welcomed and what a feast we had. My father, who happened to be there, came over, tapped me on the shoulder, and said out loud for everyone to hear, "Well done, my son. I hereby name you my successor when I die." Not bad for a little runt. I'm going to read some four-liners. Was it 1,000 stars we counted together on our last night? The war took you away, you never came back, and I sit on a hill, still counting. In utter silence, we ate our meal together, the sound of our chewing creating a tense atmosphere. Please share your pain. We came to the city, ignoring the ways of the world, rosy-cheeked, full of dreams. Now look at us close, two wasted, skinny whores. Where would the children be but for women? You can build palaces and empires, but first, erect the pedestal to those who have borne you. A few others. Sit on this chair, don't move, you're being punished. How could you have eaten my cookies? Grandma is rocking in her favorite chair, humming to herself. Today is a good day. The pain has lessened. I'll never be 25 again. Good. It was a rotten year. 82 is much better. I now know what not to do. So you don't like my nose? You say I should have it fixed? What a poor excuse for a human being you are. I am beautiful inside, and I know it. Now get out. After 20 years, therapy is not working at all. I'm still angry and childless. The fault, of course, is yours. It always was. I know it now. If I could, I would. You never need to ask me again. My love for you is fierce, but I too have limitations. I am a woman, yes, and I say no. This little piece is called Lamentation. I had heard it and I found it very powerful. The word it by itself sears my heart, brings up pictures of unspeakable sorrow. Women dressed in black, tearing their clothes, bearded men bowing at the wailing wall. The mother holding up her dead baby, the tearing of the telegram with frightful news. These are voices heard loudly toward the heavens. They are the release of unbearable hurt. But what about the deep lament that never goes away? The silent scream which is below the surface of the smile. It erodes the fiber of the soul slowly, drop by drop. It withers the life force so subtly that there are no outward sign. But make no mistake, the decay is there. And one day, with no apparent reason, the body crumbles. It becomes an empty shell. There's absolute wonderment from onlookers. We did not know, they cry out. I say, look at the eyes. They truly tell the story. A swanky party in a ritzy hotel ballroom, men dressed like penguins, women in chiffon dresses, jewels glitter, no need of lights, an alarm sounds, everyone rushes out. Coming from a side door, a hungry bum furtively comes in and eats from the sideboard, a satisfied smile on his lips. Thank you for listening. Until next time, good night.